My friend, pull up a chair and let me share something that happened last winter up in Montana. You know how some stories find you right when you need them most. Well, this one came to me through a carpenter named David Miller, 42 years old. Been living alone since he lost his wife and boy 5 years back. Now, I've lived long enough to know that grief can freeze a man's heart harder than any Montana winter. But sometimes the good Lord sends help in ways we don't expect. Sometimes it comes on 4 legs, with old scars and new hope. This story starts with a sound in the woods that changed everything, not just for David, but for a whole town. And if you listen close, it might just change something in you too. That's how the best stories work, isn't it? The whimpering was so soft David almost missed it. Like wind through barn boards. He stopped walking. His old work gloves stiff from the wet cold, 20 below last night. According to the radio weatherman, the woods behind his property were quiet the way they get after a big snow, that deep quiet that makes you feel like the only person left in the world. There it was again. Weaker this time. Coming from that big oak he passed every morning, checking his fence line. David dropped to his knees, feeling the cold bite right through his Carhartt pants. The tree had a hollow in it big as a wash bucket, about chest high. Something moved inside. He saw eyes looking back, amber-colored, like honey in a jar, but going dull. "Lord have mercy," David whispered. A dog's head filled that hollow completely. Wedged in so tight the bark had cut grooves in its neck. The poor thing's neck was swollen up, dark as a bruise. How long had it been there? 3 days since that blizzard. Maybe 4. David pulled off his gloves, reached in real careful like. The dog didn't growl, didn't snap. Just watched him with those amber eyes that had already started making peace with what was coming. His fingers found matted fur sticky with tree sap and blood. The dog was burning up with fever. "It's all right," David said. Though nothing about this was all right. "Let's see what we're dealing with here." He tried to work his fingers between the dog's neck and the wood. The dog made a sound that wasn't quite a scream. Wasn't quite a moan. Something worse. Something that came from deep inside where hurt lives. German Shepherd from what he could tell. Male, maybe 70 pounds when healthy, but ribs showed through that matted coat. Old scars on his shoulder, round ones like cigarette burns. Long ones from things David didn't want to think about. The dog's breathing sounded like water going down a partly clogged drain. His tongue, swollen and gray as old meat, hung from the side of his mouth. David pulled out his phone. 2 bars, miracle out here in the sticks. 911, what's your emergency? Got a dog trapped in a tree on Pinewood Reserve. He's dying. Need help, right quick. Sir, did you say Pinewood Reserve? That's federal land. We'll need to transfer you. There's no time for transferring. Can you send somebody? Sir, we don't have jurisdiction on federal property. Let me give you the ranger station number. David hung up, called the rangers. Got one of those messages saying office hours were Monday through Friday, 8 to 4. Today was Saturday. The dog's eyes had closed. David reached in, felt for a pulse under that swollen neck. Still there, but barely. Like a watch running down, he stood up, studied that tree. The hollow went deep. Probably 3 feet into the trunk. Opening must have been bigger before the dog went in. Wood swells up when it gets wet. And that blizzard had dumped near 2 feet. Dog probably crawled in looking for shelter. Then couldn't get out when the wood swelled up. No way to pull him out without breaking his neck. The swelling had locked him in there like a dovetail joint in one of David's cabinets. His chainsaw was in the truck, half a mile back down the trail. Federal land, protected tree. Cut it down and they'd throw the book at him, fines he couldn't pay. Maybe even jail time. Don't cut it and watch this dog die inches from help. The dog's eyes opened again, found David's face, not asking for anything, just watching, waiting. Same look David had seen in another pair of eyes 5 years back, in a hospital room that smelled like floor wax and fading hope. "Tommy," he said out loud, surprising himself. His boy had been 8. The cancer had a fancy name the doctor said real fast, like saying it quick would make it hurt less. 3 months in the hospital. And the only thing that made Tommy smile was that stray dog they'd found out behind the parking garage. Mangy thing. All bones and desperate to love somebody. They'd called him Lucky. And Tommy had made David promise to take care of him. Lucky had lived 10 weeks after Tommy passed. Long enough to stop eating, stop moving, stop trying. David had held him at the end, wondering if dogs could die of a broken heart, or if that was just something folks said to make sense of things. The German Shepherd made another sound softer than before. His breathing had gone shallow as a puddle. David was already moving, checking his pockets. Knife, flashlight, phone, nothing useful. But in the truck, "I'll be back," he told the dog. "You hear me? I'm coming back." He ran. 52 years old with a bad knee from falling off a roof 10 years back. And he ran like he was young again. His boots slipped on icy rocks. Pine branches whipped his face. The cold air burned his lungs something fierce. The truck sat where he'd left it, already dusted with new snow. He grabbed the water bottle from the cab first, then went around back to the toolbox. The chainsaw sat there like it was waiting. Stihl MS 250 18-inch bar. Could cut through that oak in no time flat. Could also land him in federal prison. David grabbed it anyway. Plus the first aid kit and the old moving blanket from behind the seat. Started back up the trail. Chainsaw bouncing against his bad leg with every step. The woods had gone even quieter, like they were holding their breath. He found himself talking to God for the first time since Tommy's last night. "Let me get there in time. Let me figure something out. Don't make me watch another thing die." The oak came into view. The dog hadn't moved. David set everything down, grabbed the water bottle, reached into that hollow, managed to get the bottle to the dog's mouth. Squeezed, gentle-like. Most of the water ran out, but he saw the throat work, trying to swallow. "That's it," David said. "That's good." He stepped back, looked at the tree again like he was studying lumber at the yard. The hollow faced east. If he cut from the west, came in at an angle. His phone buzzed. "Message from Margaret Henderson at the bakery. Heard you called 911. Everything okay?" That was Millbrook for you. News traveled faster than electricity and twice as reliable. He typed back, "Dog trapped in tree on federal land. Bad." Her answer came right quick. "Doc Sullivan heading your way." Rebecca Sullivan, the veterinarian. David had been avoiding her since Emily's funeral. When she tried to talk to him about grief and he'd walked away mid-sentence. But if she was coming... Movement in the hollow. The dog's eyes, looking at something behind David. Mr. Miller. He turned around. Doc Sullivan stood there with her medical bag. Snow in her dark hair. Younger than him by maybe 10 years. The kind of steady calm that came from dealing with scared animals and even more scared owners. Rebecca. First time he'd said her name in 5 years. She was already kneeling by the tree, hands working quick and sure, checking what she could reach. How long, she asked. 3 days, maybe 4. Temperatures dropping, bad dehydration, and this swelling. She sat back on her heels. "We need to get him out now, or not at all." David picked up the chainsaw. "That's a federal tree. she said, quiet like, I know. They'll come after you. I know. She looked at him for a long moment, then, cut here and here. She pointed to spots on the trunk. Try not to shake the tree, his neck might already be broken. David had never felt more grateful to another person in that moment. Not romantic grateful, he was too broken for that, but the grateful of recognition. Someone else who understood that sometimes the rules had to bend before the spirit broke. He pulled the starter cord. The chainsaw roared to life, shattering the quiet somewhere. Somebody would hear, somebody would report, somebody would make him pay. But not today. Today, there was only the saw and the tree and the dog whose eyes had opened at the sound. Watching David was something that might have been hope, or might have been the last to flicker before the darkness. The blade bit into wood, and David began to cut. Before we continue, please leave a like and subscribe. Let me know which city you're watching from. Now, let's get back to the story. Wood chips sprayed across David's face like hot sand. The chainsaw bucked in his hands. This oak was older than the town itself. The grain twisted from 100 Montana winters. He pulled the blade out. Repositioned. Wait. Doc Sullivan's hand on his arm. Let me give him something first. She pulled a syringe from her bag, filled it from a small bottle. The medicine looked clear as water. She reached into the hollow, and David heard the dog's breathing hitch. Then, slow, morphine, she said. Give it 30 seconds. David counted in his head, the way he used to count between lightning and thunder with Tommy. At 15, the dog's eyes drooped. At 20, his breathing got deeper, steadier. At 30, Rebecca nodded. The saw roared back to life. David cut high, away from where the dog's head had to be. The blade threw amber sap that stuck to his safety glasses like honey. 3 inches in. 4. The tree groaned, not the clean sound of fresh lumber, but the wet complaint of wood that had been dying from the inside out. Stop, Rebecca said. David killed the engine. In the sudden quiet, he heard voices coming up the trail, men's voices, getting closer. He recognized Harold Watson's laugh, the kind that came right before somebody said, I told you so. Harold had been class president back in '89, still acted like it gave him authority over something. 8 inches through now. The hollow was maybe 3 feet deep, if he could weaken the structure enough. The dog made a sound, not pain, something different. David looked. Those amber eyes were focused past him, past Rebecca, looking at something deeper in that hollow. There's something in there with him, Rebecca said, leaning closer. Something he's protecting. David's hands went still on the saw. He pulled out his flashlight, crouched down, aimed the beam into the darkness beside the dog's head. The light caught something small. Moving. No, not moving. But there had been movement once. Miller, Harold's voice now. Maybe 50 yards off. That you with that chainsaw. David ignored him. Angled the light different. Saw what the dog had been guarding in that hollow tree for 3 days. Maybe 4. 2 puppies. Newborns from the look of them. Probably born during the storm. Neither one was breathing. The dog, not a male after all. David realized. But a mother had been trying to keep them warm with her own dying body. The puppies lay curled against each other like commas in the dark. David's flashlight picked up frost on their tiny bodies no bigger than field mice. Neither one of them. Female, Rebecca said quiet-like. She's a mother. Must have crawled in here to give birth during the storm. Harold Watson crashed through the underbrush, breathing hard from the climb. Two men followed Jim Brennan from the hardware store and Ted Coleman, who ran the gas station. Harold already had his phone out, recording everything like he was some kind of news reporter. "Got you on video. Miller, that's federal property you're destroying. Prison time for sure." David turned back to the tree, started the chainsaw game. Shh. The blade bit deeper, and he could feel the oak starting to give. 10 inches, 12. A crack appeared. Running up from his cut like lightning in reverse, Rebecca had her hand in the hollow now, checking those puppies. Her face told him what he already knew. But the mother dog, she kept trying to turn her head toward them, even with her neck swollen up like it was. "Calling the Rangers right now." Harold's voice cut through when David paused the saw. Let him call. Every second arguing was another second this dog didn't have. The saw bucked, hit something harder than wood. David pulled back. Looked, a nail. Square-headed and old as Moses, probably from when somebody hung something here back when his grandfather was young. 14 inches now. The crack widened enough he could get his fingers in. "David," Rebecca's voice carried warning. Her breathing's getting worse. The dog's chest barely moved. Each breath sounded like somebody trying to breathe through a wet wool blanket. Her eyes had closed again, but her nose, she kept trying to turn her nose toward those puppies. David cut faster, sawdust filling his mouth. Tasting of rot and pine pitch. 16 inches, 17. "Rangers'll be here in 20 minutes, Harold announced, like he'd just won something. The dog's breathing stopped. David counted 1 Mississippi, 2 Mississippi, 3, then it started again. Weaker than before. He moved to a different angle, started a new cut lower down. The saw died. David pulled the cord. Nothing. Pulled again. The engine caught, sputtered like an old man coughing, died again. "Flooded it," Jim said, not unkind. Pushing too hard. David set the saw down, grabbed the edges of the crack with both hands, pulled hard enough something tore in his shoulder, the same shoulder he'd heard falling off the Andersons' roof that summer Emily was pregnant with Tommy. The wood creaked but held. "Need something to pry it," Rebecca said. "A jack, or got a tire jack in my truck." Ted said. Everyone looked at him. He shrugged. "Dog didn't ask to get stuck." Harold lowered his phone. "Ted, this is federal. Go get it," David said. Ted took off down the trail, moving pretty good for a man of 70. David kept working that crack, back and forth like he was trying to rock a fence post loose. His shoulders screamed, but the crack widened another inch. The mother dog's breathing stopped again, longer this time. David counted to 7 before it started up with a wet gasp. "She's drowning," Rebecca said, fluid in her lungs from the pressure. Ted came back, puffing like a steam engine, carrying his jack and a tire iron. David grabbed them, worked the jack into the crack, started cranking. The metal bit into the soft wood. The crack widened an inch, 2 inches. A sound like a rifle shot, not the saw, but the tree itself. The crack David had started raced upward, following the grain. 3 feet, 6 feet, 10. She's gonna fall. Jim stepped back, pulling Harold with him. David kept cranking, the jack maxed out. He repositioned it deeper, started again. The whole oak groaned like something alive and hurting. Rebecca had both arms in the hollow now, trying to support the dog's head as the tree shifted. Almost another inch. The crack reached 15 feet up. The upper part of the trunk started to lean. Slow, at first like it was thinking about it, then picking up speed. "Now!" Rebecca shouted. David dropped the jack, grabbed the dog under her front legs while Rebecca supported her head. They pulled together, She came free all at once, 60 pounds of matted fur and fever, and 2 dead puppies still attached by birth cord. They fell backward as the oak crashed down, shaking the ground hard enough David felt it in his teeth, throwing snow and broken branches 20 feet in every direction. The dog lay across David's chest, not breathing. Rebecca's hands moved over the animal's ribs, pushing in rhythm. "Come on," she whispered. "Come on." Nothing. The dog's tongue, gray as old dishwater, hung from her mouth. David's hands found those puppies, so small, so cold. The mother had been trying to keep them warm with her own dying body. 3 days, maybe 4, trapped with her dead babies, still trying to save them. Rebecca pushed harder on the dog's chest. Still nothing. Then a shudder, a cough, pink foam from her mouth, but breathing. Ragged and wet, but breathing. "Thank the Lord," somebody said. David realized it was him. The dog's eyes opened, not looking at him or Rebecca, but searching. Her nose working, trying to find the puppies. Rebecca said, "We should know." David gathered those tiny bodies gentle as he could, placed them where their mother could see them. She touched them with her nose, once, twice, then her eyes found David's, and in them was a question he'd heard before. From Tommy in that hospital bed, wanting to know why Lucky couldn't come visit anymore. "I'm sorry," David whispered. The dog closed her eyes, still breathing, but barely. "We need to move her," Rebecca said. "Now." Harold stepped forward. "Nobody's going anywhere. Rangers will be here in 10 minutes. David looked up at him. Harold still had his phone out. Still recording. Still self-righteous as a preacher with a full collection plate, but behind him. Jim had put his phone away, and Ted was already spreading the moving blanket from David's truck on the ground. "Harold," Ted said, "you got grandkids, don't you? You know I do. Emma, and then either help or get out of the way." They lifted the dog onto the blanket. She weighed nothing. Just bones and old hurt. Rebecca ran ahead for her truck. David and Ted carried the dog between them, trying not to jostle her. Jim followed, carrying those puppies wrapped in David's jacket. Harold stayed behind, still recording, still talking about federal law at the trucks. Rebecca had the back open, heat blasting. They slid the dog in. She hadn't opened her eyes again. Her breathing came in longer gaps, like she was forgetting to do it. "I need to get her to the clinic." Rebecca said, "I'm coming." David said, "The Rangers. Let them find me there." Rebecca nodded, started to close the truck gate. "Wait." David took the wrapped puppies from Jim, placed them beside their mother. The dog's nose twitched, found them. Her breathing steadied just a hair. "Meet you there," David said. Rebecca drove off, careful on the icy road. David headed for his truck, behind him. He could hear sirens, federal rangers, coming to arrest him for destroying government property, coming to make him pay for saving a dying dog who'd already lost everything. His shoulder throbbed where he'd torn something. His hands shook from cold or adrenaline, or just being 52 and tired. In the truck, he turned the heat up full blast and followed Rebecca's taillights toward town. That's when he saw it. Stuck under his windshield wiper, a note in Margaret Henderson's spidery handwriting. "Check the tree stump, Margaret." David almost didn't stop, almost kept driving. But Margaret didn't leave notes without good reason. He pulled over, walked back to the fallen oak. In the hollow where the dog had been trapped, tucked way back where only someone really looking would find it, was a collar, military issue. The tag read Ajax, K9 Unit, 4th Infantry, MWD, below that. Smaller handler Sergeant Michael Torres, KIA Kandahar. David stood there in the falling snow, holding proof that this dog had already lost one partner who'd promised to take care of her. The sirens were getting closer. The veterinary clinic smelled like Lysol and fear. David's boots tracked mud across the white linoleum. Emily would have made him take them off at the door. Rebecca already had the dog Ajax. Her name was Ajax on the steel table. Working fast with IV needles. "Hold her head," Rebecca said. David's hands cradled the massive skull. Fur came away in clumps, leaving bare skin purple as a bruise where the tree had pressed. Ajax's eyes stayed closed, third eyelid showing white at the corners. Her breathing came in stutters, 3 short gasps. Long pause, 3 more gasps. Rebecca's scissors cut away matted fur. A needle went in between ribs. The syringe filled with pink foam that looked like strawberry milk gone wrong. "Pulmonary edema," she said, more to herself than David. Fluid in the lungs, temperatures down to 94. David knew 94. Tommy had hit 94 that last night. The nurses had brought heated blankets, packed them around his small body like they were trying to convince him to stay. But bodies don't get that cold unless they're getting ready to leave. The bell above the clinic door chimed. Heavy footsteps. Rangers wore a particular kind of boot that announced authority with every step. Mr. Miller, 2 of them. The younger one had his hand resting on his service weapon like David might run. The older one, gray at the temples like a distinguished banker, held one of those electronic tablets. "Ranger Stevens," the older one said, "you need to come with us." "No." Stevens stepped closer, bringing the smell of aftershave and official business. "Sir, you're under arrest for destruction of federal property. Title 18, Section 1361. You can come quietly," or Ajax convulsed. Her back arched like a bow. Pink foam bubbled from her mouth. Rebecca grabbed a suction tube, cleared the airway while the dog's legs paddled against nothing. "Seizure," Rebecca said. "David, hold her shoulders. Keep her from falling." David turned his back on the Rangers, pinned Ajax's front legs. Her muscles felt like steel cables under the skin, pulling in directions they shouldn't. The seizure lasted 20 seconds, 30, 40, then stillness, complete stillness. "Is she still with us?" Rebecca checked pupils with a penlight. "Barely." The younger ranger stepped forward. "Sir, we need to touch him, and I'll have you charged with interfering in emergency veterinary care." Rebecca didn't look up from Ajax. "This is a military working dog. Check her collar." David pulled the collar from his pocket, handed it to Stevens. Watched the man's face change as he read it. Rangers dealt with a lot of federal property, but a military dog was different. That was somebody's partner. That was a soldier. Stevens handed the collar to his partner. They looked at each other the way men do when they realize they've stepped in something deeper than they thought. The door chimed again. Margaret Henderson, carrying a cardboard box like it held eggs. Behind her, Ted Coleman, then Jim Brennan, then others. David recognized faces from the diner, the post office, the Methodist church. They filed in quiet-like until the small clinic held 15, maybe 20 people. "What's this?" the younger ranger asked. "Witnesses," Margaret said. She set down her box, pulled out a manila folder thick with papers. "Ranger Stevens, is it? I've got some documents you might want to see." Stevens took the folder. His face got darker as he read, like storm clouds building. "That tree was marked for removal in 2019, Margaret said. 3 different children got stuck in it over the years. Your office ignored every report. How did you get these My nephew works at Forest Service headquarters in Missoula. Margaret smiled the way she did when she caught someone trying to sneak day-old donuts. Amazing what people leave in their email when they think nobody's looking. Ajax's breathing hitched, stopped completely. Rebecca started chest compressions, counting under her breath. David watched the dog's ribs bend under Rebecca's hands. In and down, like she was trying to push start a reluctant engine. A heartbeat, another. Breathing resumed. Weak, but there. She needs surgery, Rebecca said. Spleen's probably ruptured. Internal bleeding. But I can't operate without owner consent. And she's military property, Stephen said quietly. Technically abandoned federal equipment. Then you can authorize treatment. Rebecca shot back. You're federal agents. The younger ranger shifted his weight. We don't have that authority. You had authority to arrest a man for saving her. Silence except for Ajax's labored breathing. David kept his hand on her head, feeling the fever heat slowly leaving. She was going. He'd held enough dying things to know the signs. Tommy's voice came back clear as spring water. Dad, promise you'll take care of Lucky when I can't. David had promised, had failed. Lucky died alone while David was at the cemetery, picking out a headstone with the right kind of angels carved on it. Came home to find Lucky still warm on Tommy's bed, like he'd waited for permission to go. I'll take responsibility, David said. Stevens looked at him. Mr. Miller, you're already facing federal charges. I don't care about charges. She needs help. I'll sign whatever needs signing. She's not your dog. She's nobody's dog. That's the problem. Margaret opened her box again, pulled out a photograph, young soldier, maybe 25. Latino features, holding a German shepherd puppy. Same amber eyes on that puppy. Same tilt to the head. Sergeant Michael Torres, she said, found this on the memorial website. That's Ajax at 8 weeks old. Stevens studied the photo. His partner leaned in, whispered something. Stevens nodded. Mr. Miller, I need to make some calls. Don't leave town. Wasn't planning to. The Rangers left, but the crowd stayed. Silent witnesses to Ajax's struggle. Her breathing grew shallower, each exhale longer than the inhale before it. Rebecca hung a second IV bag. This one with something that made the heart monitor spike briefly before settling back to its irregular rhythm. Epinephrine, Rebecca explained. Buying time. Time for what David wanted to ask. Time to watch another thing slip away. Margaret touched his shoulder. David, there's something else. She showed him another paper from her box, a printout from a military website, the kind Tommy used to browse when he was dreaming about being a soldier before the cancer came. Military working dogs can be adopted by civilians if their handler is deceased, but there's a process. Forms, background checks, and... She hesitated like she did when she had to tell someone the bank had refused their loan. Priority goes to the handler's family. Torres have family, a mother, in El Paso. David looked at Ajax, her paws twitching in whatever dream dying dogs have. Somewhere in El Paso. A mother had lost her son. Did she know his dog was alive? Would she want the reminder? Call her, he said. Margaret pulled out her phone. I already did, yesterday. When Harold started posting videos online, David's chest got tight the way it did when he thought about Emily. And she's driving up. Left El Paso this morning. The monitor beeped. Ajax's heart rate dropping. 40 beats per minute, 35. She won't make it in time, Rebecca said. Soft enough only David could hear. David thought about Tommy asking why Lucky couldn't get the same medicine he was getting. Thought about explaining that dogs and boys had different kinds of insurance. Thought about the savings account that still held money for a college that would never happen. Do the surgery, he said. David, it's $12,000, maybe more. I know. If she doesn't make it, do it anyway. Rebecca looked at him for a long moment, then nodded. Everyone out. I need to prep. David, you're staying. I need an extra pair of hands. The crowd filed toward the door. David started to follow. Not you, Rebecca said. Wash up, sink's over there. Use the soap with the orange label. David scrubbed his hands, watching mud and blood swirl down the drain. In the reflection of the paper towel dispenser, he saw movement outside. Harold Watson's truck pulling up. Harold got out, but he wasn't alone. A woman climbed from the passenger side. Dark hair streaked with gray, maybe 50. She wore a folded American flag clutched against her chest like armor. Torres's mother had lied to Margaret. She hadn't left this morning. She was already here. The woman stood in the doorway, still clutching that folded flag, her knuckles white as fresh paper. Her eyes found Ajax on the table, breathing tube down her throat. Rebecca's gloved hands pressing electrode paddles against shaved skin. Clear, Rebecca said. The shock. Ajax's body jumped like a fish on a dock. Nothing on the monitor. Again, another shock. A heartbeat stuttered back to life on the screen. Mrs. Torres had to be heard took 3 steps into the room. The flag shook in her hands. That's her, she said. Not a question, just recognition. The way you'd recognize your own child even after years apart. David nodded. She's dying. We're operating, Rebecca said without looking up. Mr. Miller, I need you scrubbed, now. David moved to the sink. Started scrubbing again even though his hands were already raw, behind him. Mrs. Torres set the flag on the counter, careful to keep the corners straight and proper. Michael sent videos, she said to nobody in particular. Ajax is a puppy. Ajax in training. Ajax in Afghanistan. She pulled out a phone with a cracked screen, the kind you keep using because what's inside matters more than how it looks. This was the last one. On the tiny screen, Ajax in tactical gear, standing over a soldier on a stretcher. The soldier's legs ended wrong, too soon. Ajax's mouth was red, not her blood. She'd dragged him from something burning in the background. That soldier, Mrs. Torres asked David, even though he couldn't know. Lives in Dallas now, 3 kids, twin boys and a girl, because of her. The monitor beeped angry, heart rate dropping again. I need to start, Rebecca said. Mrs. Torres, you should wait outside. No, the word came out flat, like she'd used up all her arguing on other things. Rebecca looked at David. He saw her weighing it time lost arguing versus time lost with distraction. Stand back then, Rebecca said. Behind that line on the floor, she made the first incision along Ajax's side. Blood welled up immediate, too much. Like a faucet nobody remembered to turn off. David handed gauze without being asked, pressed where Rebecca pointed. The blood soaked through, warm against his palms, even through the latex gloves. Spleens ruptured, Rebecca said, working fast. And, wait, what's this? She reached into the cavity, pulled out something that didn't belong. Metal, twisted like a question mark, about 2 inches long. Shrapnel, Mrs. Torres said, from the IED that killed Michael. Rebecca dropped the metal in a kidney dish. It rang like a cracked bell. She's been carrying that for 2 years, and David asked. They said they got it all out at the field hospital. Mrs. Torres's voice stayed steady, but her hands didn't. Said she was cleared for duty, sent her back out 3 days later. Rebecca worked faster now. Sutures flying like she was darning a sock nobody could see. David suctioned blood from the cavity. Tried not to think about what he was seeing. Ajax's breathing machine cycled steady in pause, out, pause, nothing like real breathing at all. Who left her? Rebecca asked while she worked. After your son died, who just left her? Command said she'd be reassigned. New handler. Found out last week that was a lie. Mrs. Torres laughed. But it came out broken. They retired her. Said she was too damaged. Some contractor was supposed to rehome her. More blood. Rebecca's scrubs were soaked now from wrists to elbows. David's shoulder. The torn one screamed every time he leaned over the table. He ignored it. Kept suctioning. Kept watching Rebecca's hands navigate inside Ajax like she had a map of what should be where. There, Rebecca said finally. Got the main bleeder. The blood slowed from a pour to a seep. Rebecca started closing. Layer by careful layer. David watched the monitor heart steady at 60. Blood pressure still low but climbing. Harold Watson appeared at the window. No longer recording. His face had gone gray, watching the surgery through the glass. He turned away when Rebecca started the external sutures. 19 days, Mrs. Torres said suddenly. Everyone looked at her. Michael was in surgery 19 days total before he died. Kept saying Ajax's name. The nurses thought he was asking for his girlfriend. She touched the window glass. Left a handprint in the fog from her breath. I never corrected them. Thought maybe it helped. Them thinking he had a girl waiting. Rebecca finished the last suture. Checked Ajax's pupils. Listened to her chest with a stethoscope that had seen better days. She's stable. For now. What's that mean? For now, David asked. Brain could be damaged from the oxygen loss. Kidneys might fail from the dehydration. Infection from... Rebecca gestured at the surgery site. The incision held together with blue suture that looked too thin to hold anything. Take your pick. She peeled off her gloves, threw them in the red biohazard bin. David noticed her hands shaking not a lot, but enough. I'll stay with her, David said. Mr. Miller. Mrs. Torres turned to face him proper. Why? The question sat there between them like a third person. David thought about Tommy reading to Lucky from his hospital bed. Sounding out the big words in those warriors' books he loved. Thought about Emily singing to her goldfish when she thought nobody was listening. Thought about empty rooms and photographs he kept face down and promises he'd broken. Someone should, he said. Mrs. Torres studied him the way you study a map when you're lost looking for landmarks. Or something familiar. Whatever she saw made her nod once, sharp. The Rangers will be back. Harold said from the doorway. They're not going to just forget about this. Let them come, Margaret said. David hadn't heard her come back in. I've made some calls. To who? People who might care that a military dog got abandoned to die. The clinic phone rang. Rebecca answered, listened, hung up. That was the ranger station. They want everyone involved at the federal building tomorrow morning. 9 a.m. Tomorrow's Sunday. Jim pointed out. Apparently, this can't wait. David looked at Ajax. Still as death except for the machine breathing for her. The incision ran 8 inches along her side. Angry red around the blue sutures, her fur, where they'd shaved it. Showed more scars, round ones, linear ones. A whole history written in damaged skin. Mrs. Torres pulled a chair next to the surgery table. Sat down like she was settling in for a long wait. The way she'd probably sat in a military hospital in Germany. Waiting for news about her son. Mr. Miller, she said, tell me about the tree. So David told her. The sound first. The eyes in the darkness. The puppies. Puppies. Rebecca interrupted. Where are they? David pointed to the corner where he'd set them. Still wrapped in his jacket, Rebecca unwrapped them, careful, like they might break. 2 small forms, perfect and still. Mrs. Torres stood, walked over, looked for a long moment. We should bury them, she said. Ground's frozen solid. Harold said, take a pickaxe just to scratch the surface. Then we'll build a fire to thaw it. Mrs. Torres' voice carried the kind of authority that came from telling children what to do and having them listen. Harold left, came back 20 minutes later with a pickaxe and shovel. Ted brought wood from his truck. They built the fire in the empty lot behind the clinic. Fed it until flames stood tall as a man. The heat pushed back the cold, created a circle of mud in the frozen earth. David dug first, his torn shoulder making every swing agony. Mrs. Torres took the pickaxe from him without asking, swung it herself. They traded off David, Mrs. Torres, Ted. Even Harold took a turn. The hole grew deep enough. Rebecca brought the puppies out, wrapped now in a clean surgical drape. Mrs. Torres pulled something from her pocket dog tags. Not Ajax's, Michael's. He'd want them to have something, she said, tucking the tags in with the puppies. They lowered the bundle, gentle as they could, filled the hole. Mrs. Torres spoke in Spanish. David didn't understand the words but recognized the rhythm. Prayer? Maybe. Or just a mother talking to her son through Montana soil and winter sky. When they got back inside, Ajax's eyes were open, not focused, not really seeing, but open. Hey, girl, Mrs. Torres whispered. Ajax's eyes tracked toward the voice, slow and uncertain. Her tail, what they could see of it, moved. Just once, barely a twitch. But movement. David's phone buzzed. Text from an unknown number. This is Stevens. Check the news. And David pulled up the local news site on his phone. The headline made his stomach drop like he'd missed a step going downstairs. Local man destroys protected tree to save military hero dog. Federal charges pending. But it was the subtitle that made him look at Mrs. Torres. Dog's original handler's family claims ownership rights. Mrs. Torres was looking at her own phone, her face gone pale as milk. That's not me, she said. I never claimed. Her phone rang. She answered, listened, hung up. That was a lawyer, she said. Someone filed ownership papers an hour ago. Who? David asked. Mrs. Torres looked at him, then at Ajax, then back at her phone. Michael's father, my ex-husband, who hasn't spoken to either of us in 5 years. The heart monitor beeped faster. Ajax's eyes had closed again, but her breathing had changed quicker, shallower, like she could smell another fight coming. The ex-husband's name was Richard Torres. David learned this from the lawsuit papers served at 7 in the morning. Ajax still hooked to machines that did her breathing for her. Wrongful interference with property rights, the process server said, looking at his shoes instead of David's face. Young kid, probably his first job out of high school. Destruction of federal property, theft of military assets. 3 separate counts. Richard Torres wasn't just claiming Ajax, he was coming after David for damages. Mrs. Torres, Elena. She told him to call her Elena, sat beside Ajax's recovery cage with her fingers threaded through the chain link. The dog hadn't moved in 12 hours, except for the mechanical rise and fall of forced air into her lungs. Richard never wanted Michael to enlist, Elena said to the air. Called him stupid for choosing dogs over college. Didn't even come to the funeral. Why now? David asked, though he could guess. The news story mentioned Ajax saved 14 soldiers. There's probably money in that somewhere. Speaking fees, book deals, maybe a movie. She laughed, but it came out sour as spoiled milk. Richard could always smell money like a hound smells rabbit. Rebecca checked Ajax's vitals, adjusted the IV drip that kept her hydrated. The dog's temperature had stabilized at 101 normal, but her eyes stayed closed. Third eyelid showing like a half-drawn shade. "She's in there," Rebecca said. "Somewhere." David wanted to believe it, but he'd seen that same stillness before. In Tommy's last days, the body continuing its habits while the person or dog had already started packing up to leave. 6 months later, Federal Courthouse, Missoula. David's shoulder still hurt where he'd torn it. Some mornings he couldn't lift his coffee cup with his right hand. Rebecca said he needed surgery. He said he needed to get through the trial first. Ajax walked beside him into the courthouse, her head tilted permanent to the left where nerve damage had settled in like an unwelcome relative. She wore a service vest, now Elena had fought for that. Cotton, Ajax registered as David's emotional support animal. The forms had asked what emotional support she provided. David had written, "She reminds me to keep breathing," and nobody had questioned it. State your name or the record. David Miller, the prosecutor, James Mitchell. Looked like every TV lawyer David had ever seen, suit that cost more than David made in 2 months. Hair that didn't move when he walked. Teeth so white they hurt to look at. "Mr. Miller, on January 15th, did you take a chainsaw to a protected tree in Pinewood Federal Reserve?" "Yes." Despite knowing it was federal property, yes. Despite being warned of the legal consequences. David looked at Ajax lying at his feet. Her head tilted left, always left now, like she was perpetually asking a question nobody could answer. "Yes." Mitchell smiled, the way a cat might smile at a cornered mouse. "No further questions." David's lawyer, a public defender named Marcus Webb, who looked young enough to be David's son, stood up. His suit didn't fit right in the shoulders. His shoes squeaked on the polished floor. "Mr. Miller, why did you cut the tree? Dog was dying. Could you elaborate?" David thought about elaborating, about the wet breathing that sounded like Tommy drowning from the inside, about the puppies frozen like question marks, about Ajax's eyes trusting him for no earthly reason. "No need to elaborate. Dog was dying, so I cut the tree." Mitchell's second witness was Richard Torres. The man strutted to the witness stand like a rooster in a henhouse. Gold watch that caught the courtroom lights. Pressed white shirt that had never seen real work. The kind of man who'd never pulled a dying thing from a tree in his life. "Ajax is military property," Richard said, leaning into the microphone like he was giving a speech. "My son's military service makes me next of kin for his equipment." "Equipment?" Judge Patricia Summers interrupted. First time she'd spoken since opening statements. "Military working dogs are classified as equipment. Your Honor, same as a rifle or a vehicle." The judge's face didn't change, but something in her eyes did. David had seen that look before, and Tommy's oncologist when the insurance company called his chemotherapy experimental and refused to cover it. Elena testified next. She showed videos from Michael's phone, Ajax as a puppy chewing Michael's bootlaces. Ajax graduating from training with Michael grinning like he'd won the lottery. Ajax in Afghanistan with dust in her fur and purpose in her eyes. In every video, Michael's voice came through young and proud and alive. She was never equipment to him, Elena said. Harold Watson took the stand after lunch. He'd worn his good jacket, the one from his daughter's wedding 20 years back. Moss had gotten at the left sleeve, but he'd tried to hide it by keeping that arm down. "I recorded Mr. Miller destroying the tree," he said. The video played on the courtroom screen. David watched himself from 6 months ago, covered in sawdust and desperation. Cutting into that oak, while Harold's voice provided commentary about federal crimes and consequences. "Thank you, Mr. Watson," Mitchell said. "The prosecution rests." Marcus called Rebecca to testify about Ajax's injuries. Called the veterinary specialists from Missoula who'd treated her through 3 separate cardiac arrests during recovery. Would she have survived without immediate intervention? Marcus asked. She had minutes. Rebecca said, maybe less. Ted Coleman testified about the fallen tree. Jim Brennan about the community response. Margaret Henderson brought her box of documents showing the tree had been marked for removal since 2019, ignored like a bill nobody wanted to pay. But David could see Judge Summers' face. The law was the law. The tree had been federal property. He'd destroyed it. Everything else was just noise around the edges. They took a 15-minute recess. David stood outside with Ajax, watching November snowfall. Different from January snow lighter, less committed to staying. Ajax pressed against his leg. She did that now whenever his breathing changed. Rebecca said dogs could sense anxiety, respond to it. David just knew that when Ajax leaned in, the knot in his chest loosened a little. Elena came out, pulled a pack of cigarettes from her purse. "Haven't smoked in 10 years, she said, hands shaking as she tried to work the lighter. "Want me to? No. Yes. I don't know." She gave up. Put the cigarette back. "You know what Michael wrote in his last letter 3 weeks before the IED? He wrote, 'Mom, if something happens to me, make sure Ajax is okay. She's the best part of me over here.'" A black SUV pulled up to the courthouse. Government plates. The door opened and a man stepped out, military uniform. Full dress. Medals David couldn't identify lined up like punctuation marks. Colonel Michael Roberts, according to his name tag. He walked with a limp, favoring his left leg. "Mr. Miller." David nodded. "I need to show you something." He pulled out a tablet, swiped to a video, grainy footage, the kind from security cameras, night vision green, a checkpoint in Afghanistan. On screen, Ajax throwing herself at a man with something bulky under his coat. The explosion, Ajax flying backward like a broken toy. Soldiers scrambling, shouting without sound. Then Ajax getting up, back leg dragging, still moving toward the checkpoint. "That's 3 weeks before Sergeant Torres was killed," Roberts said. "Ajax took shrapnel to protect the unit. We medevaced her to Bagram, but she escaped from the surgical unit, found her way back to Torres. 6 miles through hostile territory with a hole in her side you could put your thumb through." David looked at Ajax. She was watching a squirrel on a tree branch. Head tilted in that permanent question. "Why show me this?" David asked. "Because that prosecutor in there is about to argue Ajax's equipment, property, no different than a rifle or a rucksack." Roberts's jaw tightened. "I've got 14 soldiers who disagree. 14 families who still have fathers and sons because Ajax bled for them." They went back inside. Mitchell started his closing argument. All lot and precedent, and the danger of letting emotions override regulations. Marcus stood for his closing. Dropped his note cards. They scattered across the floor like fallen leaves. "Sorry," he said, dropping to his knees to gather them. Then he stopped, looked at the cards, looked at Ajax, who was watching him with her head tilted. "You know what?" Marcus stood, leaving the cards on the floor. "Forget the cards." He walked to stand in front of the judge. "Your Honor, Mr. Mitchell is right. The law's clear. Mr. Miller broke it. He destroyed federal property to save a dog. That's not in dispute. David's chest tightened. His own lawyer was agreeing with the prosecution. Marcus continued, "But there's something else that's not in dispute. Ajax served 3 tours in Afghanistan. Her handler died saving others. She was abandoned by the same system that used her up and threw her away. And when Mr. Miller found her dying in a tree trapped while trying to save puppies that were already dead, he made a choice." Marcus walked to the defense table, put his hand on David's shoulder. He chose mercy over law, compassion over compliance, life over regulations. If that's a crime, then maybe. The courtroom door banged open. A small figure ran down the aisle. Emma Watson, Harold's granddaughter. 7 years old. Soaking wet from head to toe, even though it hadn't rained in 3 days. She was crying hard enough her whole body shook. Her lips had gone blue as a bruise. "Grandpa!" She ran straight to Harold, buried her face in his jacket. "Grandpa, the ice." Harold grabbed her shoulders. "What ice, Emma? What?" "Tommy's pond. We were playing. It broke." Jason still. The courtroom exploded. Harold already running. Emma clutched against his chest. David grabbed Ajax's leash, but the dog was already moving, pulling toward the door with more strength than she'd shown in months. Recess. Judge Summers banged her gavel. "Marshall, call 911. Tommy's pond." David knew it, the irrigation reservoir behind his property, where Tommy learned to skip stones the summer before he got sick. Quarter-mile through the woods. November ice was different from January ice, thick at the edges where you tested it. Paper thin in the middle where it mattered. They ran. David's bad knee screamed with every step. Ajax pulled hard enough the leash burned his palms. Her body weaving left with that permanent tilt. Colonel Roberts ran beside them, his limp making his dress shoes slap uneven on the frozen ground behind them. Half the courtroom followed Judge's orders forgotten. Mitchell's closing argument abandoned. "How long?" Harold gasped at Emma. "I don't know." 5 minutes, 10. I ran fast as I could." "Grandpa." 10 minutes under ice. David's chest constricted. Nobody survived 10 minutes. They burst through the tree line. The pond stretched out gray as old dishwater. 50 yards across, 20 feet from shore, a hole in the ice black as spilled ink. A small head bobbing Jason Watson, 9 years old. Harold's grandson, arms slapping at the ice edge, trying to pull himself up. Each attempt broke more ice away. Harold set Emma down, started toward the pond. "Stop." David grabbed his arm. "You go out there. You'll both go through. That's my grandson. And you weigh 200 pounds. That ice won't hold." Jason's head went under, came up gasping. His lips were purple-black, the color of bruises that go too deep. Ajax made a sound, not quite bark, not quite whine, something older. She pulled toward the ice, muscles bunching under her scarred coat. "No." David held the leash tight. "You're still healing. That surgery site." Jason went under again, longer this time, 3 seconds, 4, 5. David dropped the leash. Ajax moved like water across the ice low to the ground. Weight spread wide. That permanent left tilt making her path snake back and forth. The ice creaked underneath her. Spiderweb cracks spread from each paw print. "Ajax, no." Elena's voice behind them. When had she gotten here 20 feet out? 30. The ice groaned like an old floor. Ajax's back legs broke through. She pulled herself forward with her front paws. Claws scratching for purchase on the slick surface. Made it to solid ice. Kept going. Jason wasn't coming up. Ajax reached the hole. No hesitation dove straight in. The water was black as oil, probably 38 degrees. David counted 1 Mississippi, 2 Mississippi, 3. Ajax's head broke the surface. Jason's collar clamped in her jaws. The boy wasn't moving. Head lolling back. Eyes rolled up, showing white. Ajax swam to the ice edge. Tried to lift him up. The edge broke. She tried another spot. It broke too. She was building a ramp. David realized. Breaking the ice deliberately in steps. Each piece lower than the last. But she was tiring. Her head kept dipping under that left tilt, pulling her off balance. The surgical scar along her side had gone dark purple with cold. "Get rope," somebody shouted. "Branch," somebody else yelled. Colonel Roberts was already stripping off his dress uniform jacket, tying the sleeves to Ted Coleman's coat, then Jim's, making a human chain of fabric. David dropped flat on the ice, started crawling forward. The ice sang under his weight, high-pitched. "Wrong." "David, don't." Rebecca's voice sharp with fear. 10 feet from shore, the ice cracked. Not through, not yet, but close. He kept crawling, spreading himself flat as he could. Behind him, he felt the others following Roberts, Ted, Harold, all belly down, spreading the weight. Ajax had Jason pushed up on a shelf of broken ice now, his chest out of the water. But she couldn't lift him higher. Her front paws scraped uselessly at the ice. Her breathing came in gasps that sounded like Tommy's ventilator. Mechanical and wrong. David reached the hole's edge, grabbed Jason under the arms. The boy was limp as wet laundry, lips gone from purple to gray. David pulled. Ajax pushed from below, her head barely above water now. The ice under David cracked deeper. He could hear it spreading beneath him like bones breaking. "Pull us back," David shouted. The human chain pulled. David slid backward across the ice, dragging Jason. Ajax tried to follow, couldn't get purchase. Her head went under. Came up, went under again. No. David let go of Jason. Reached for Ajax. Roberts was beside him now, grabbing the boy. "I've got him. Get the dog." David plunged his arm into the water. The cold hit like electricity, making his fingers into wooden things. Nothing. Again, nothing. The black water gave nothing back. Then he grabbed, pulled hard. Ajax came up, eyes unfocused, not breathing. They slid back to shore, Roberts dragging Jason, David dragging Ajax, on solid ground. Rebecca was already over Jason, pushing on his chest. The boy vomited water. Started coughing, weak but alive. Ajax lay still. Elena dropped beside her. Started compressions on the dog's chest. David breathed into Ajax's nose. Tasted pond water and blood. Push, push, breathe, push, push, breathe. "Come on," Elena whispered. "Michael needs you to come back. I need you to come back." Nothing. Ajax lay there like a broken toy, water pooling around her. David felt her ribs, still warm but cooling fast. The surgery scar had split partway, not completely, but blood seeped through, even if they got her breathing. Internal damage. Ajax coughed. Water and blood came out. She coughed again, tried to lift her head. Failed. "Thank God," somebody said. Might have been Harold, might have been David himself. "Ambulance coming," Judge Summers said. David hadn't even noticed she'd followed them. "Or the boy," Rebecca said. Hands already checking Ajax's split incision. "The dog needs surgery, now." David picked Ajax up. 60 pounds of wet fur and fading heat. Ran for the parking lot. Rebecca's truck was closer than his. He laid Ajax in the back. Climbed in beside her. "Drive," he told Rebecca. She drove. Fast enough, the truck fishtailed on the curves. Ajax's breathing came wet and labored. The split in her incision had widened. David could see things inside that should stay inside. She tore internal sutures, Rebecca said, looking in the mirror. Swimming motion would have just drive. The clinic was 12 minutes away. David counted Ajax's breaths, 20 per minute, then 15, then 12, then 8. They carried her straight to surgery. Rebecca went to work, new IV oxygen, opening the old incision to see what had torn inside. I need to operate, Rebecca said. But David. Her heart stopped twice during the first surgery. She's weaker now, hypothermic, lost blood. Do it. It might not just do it. Rebecca looked at him, at Ajax, at Elena, who'd just arrived with Colonel Roberts. Okay, but I need everyone out except David. David, scrub up. He washed his hands for the third time that day, watching pink waters swirl away. In the surgery room, Ajax lay small and still on the steel table. The anesthesia mask covered her muzzle. Her eyes had already closed. Rebecca made the first incision along the old scar line. Blood welled immediately, too much, too fast. Clamp, she said. David handed it to her. She worked fast, finding bleeders, tying them off, but more kept appearing. Her blood's not clotting right. Rebecca said, hypothermia does that. She needs a transfusion. Do you have dog blood? No. I'd need another dog to donate. A healthy one, same size or bigger. David thought of the empty streets outside. No time to find a donor, no time for anything. The monitor beeped, Ajax's heart rate dropping. 60, 50, 40. She's going, Rebecca said. David put his hand on Ajax's head. Still warm but cooling. Just like Lucky. Just like Tommy. Everything he touched turned cold eventually. The clinic door banged open. Where is she? A voice David didn't recognize. A man appeared in the doorway, army uniform, everyday fatigues, German shepherd beside him on a leash bigger than Ajax, younger. Same amber eyes. I'm Sergeant Williams, the man said. This is Ranger. He's Ajax's son from her last litter before deployment. Can he donate blood? Rebecca was already moving. He's big enough. Blood type should match. David, hold him. David held Ranger while Rebecca drew blood. The dog stood perfectly still, eyes never leaving his mother on the table. How did you know? David asked Williams. Colonel Roberts called. Said Ajax needed help. We drove from Fort Harrison, 2 hours and 90 minutes. He paused, watching Rebecca work. Ajax saved my life in Kandahar. Pulled me from a burning Humvee. I'd been trying to track her down since I heard she was retired. The transfusion went in. The monitor showed Ajax's heart rate stabilizing. 50, 55, 60. Rebecca worked for another hour repairing torn tissue, checking for more damage. David lost track of the clamps and sutures and careful movements. Finally, she stepped back. That's all I can do, she said. Ajax lay still on the table, breathing on her own now, but barely. The incision closed again with new sutures that looked too fragile to hold. Williams had Ranger lie down beside the surgery table. The younger dog rested his head where he could see his mother, making soft whimpering sounds. She saved the boy, Williams asked. David nodded. Williams smiled, sad and proud at once. That's Ajax. Never could stop saving people. The monitor beeped, heart rate dropping again. David watched the numbers fall, 50, 45, 40. Then he saw something. Ranger had stood up, was touching his nose to his mother's face, making sounds David had never heard a dog make, soft, urgent. Almost like words, Ajax's eyes flickered open. Just for a second. Saw Ranger. Her tail moved, once, barely a twitch. The monitor kept beeping, slower, slower. 30 beats per minute, 25, 20 beats per minute. The monitor's beep stretched longer between each pulse, like a conversation running out of words. Ranger pressed closer to his mother, that soft whining getting higher, more urgent. David's hand found Ajax's chest, barely any movement under the fur. Her gums had gone white as typing paper. "She needs more blood," Rebecca said, but her voice said what her words didn't. More blood wouldn't fix this. Williams was already rolling up his sleeve. "I'm O negative. Universal donor. That's for humans. Dogs need dog blood." "Then find another dog." Rebecca's hands moved over Ajax's still form, checking pulses that weren't there, looking for miracles in medical training. "There's no time." The monitor flatlined. One long, steady tone that David had heard before. 5 years ago. In a different room. Rebecca grabbed the defibrillator paddles. "Clear." The shock, Ajax's body jumped. Nothing on the screen. Again, another shock. Still that long, unbroken line. Ranger howled long and low. The sound wolves made before humans taught them to be quiet. David had heard that sound only once before, from Lucky the night Tommy didn't come home from the hospital. "One more," Rebecca said, but even she didn't believe it. The third shock. A blip on the monitor, another, weak, irregular, but there. "She's back," Rebecca whispered, but without more blood. The clinic door slammed open. Judge Summers walked in, still in her black robes. Behind her, the marshal, Prosecutor Mitchell looking uncomfortable in his expensive suit, and Harold Watson with his grandson Jason, the boy wrapped in blankets but standing on his own 2 feet. His lips had gone from gray back to pink, though he shook like a leaf in wind. "Don't stop what you're doing," Judge Summers said. "Save that dog." Mitchell stepped forward. "Your Honor, this is highly irregular." "James, shut your mouth." The judge's voice could have frozen July. "That dog just saved a child in my presence after saving 14 soldiers in Afghanistan." She looked at Mitchell. "You called her equipment, property. Show me what equipment jumps through ice to save a drowning boy." Jason pulled free from his grandfather, walked to the surgery table on legs that weren't quite steady, put his small hand on Ajax's paw. "She went under for me," he said. His voice came out scratchy from pond water. She knew the ice wouldn't hold, but she went anyway. 15 beats per minute on the monitor, each beep farther apart. Williams had his phone out, making calls. "We need dogs, any dogs. German Shepherds preferred, but yes, bring them all." The veterinary clinic on Main Street. 10 minutes later. The parking lot filled with pickup trucks. David recognized faces and strangers both, all with dogs. Rebecca and Doc Harrison from the county set up an emergency donation station. They checked blood types fast, drew from the matches. Ajax got 3 transfusions from a shepherd mix named Bear, a lab called Duchess, and a police K9 named Thor, whose handler had driven 40 miles after hearing the call on his radio. The monitor showed 30 beats, 35, 40. Judge Summers hadn't moved from her spot by the door, watching everything with eyes that missed nothing. "Mr. Miller," she said, "I need to ask you something." David looked up from Ajax. "That tree you cut, would you do it again?" "Yes." "Even knowing you'd face federal charges?" "Yes." "Even if this dog died anyway?" David looked at Ajax's still form, thought about her eyes in that hollow. trusting him when she had no reason to trust anything. Yes. The judge nodded, turned to Mitchell, dropped the charges. Your Honor, I can't just. You can and you will. She pulled out her phone, showed him something on the screen. That's an email from the Secretary of the Interior. Seems someone. She glanced at Margaret. Called him about a military dog abandoned by federal contractors. He's very interested in why his department is prosecuting the man who saved her instead of investigating who left her to die. Mitchell's face went pale as milk left out too long. The law serves justice. Sometimes justice means admitting the law was wrong. Judge Summers looked at Ajax. Still unconscious but breathing steadier now. Besides, I have new evidence. She nodded to the marshal, who brought in a laptop. On screen, a video from 2019. The same oak tree, 3 children playing hide-and-seek, one crawling into the hollow, getting stuck. Fire department cutting him out. Careful not to damage the protected tree. That's incident 1, the judge said. There are 2 more, all reported, all ignored because nobody wanted to do the paperwork. Another video, the tree again, this time with yellow tape around it. A Forest Service worker with a clipboard, marking it for removal. That's from 2020, Judge Summers said. The removal was approved, then buried in bureaucracy. Richard Torres stepped forward from the back of the room. David hadn't seen him come in. Same expensive suit from the news photos. Same gold watch. Same face that had never gotten dirty pulling something from a tree. Your Honor, regardless of the tree situation, the dog is military property. My son's death makes me nothing. Helena interrupted. It makes you nothing to her. I'm Michael's father. No, you were his father. You stopped when he chose the army over your plans. Missed his graduation, his deployment, his funeral. Helena's voice stayed level, but her hands shook like leaves before a storm. You don't get to claim him now because there might be money in it. Richard pulled out papers from his jacket. I have legal. Colonel Roberts took the papers, tore them clean in half. Sergeant Torres left a will. Filed with JAG before his last deployment, left everything to his mother, including Ajax. That's destruction of legal documents. Sue me. Roberts turned to Judge Summers. Your Honor, I have 14 sworn statements from soldiers Ajax saved. They're prepared to testify that she's not equipment. She's a veteran, and veterans don't get abandoned. Ajax's eyes opened, unfocused, pupils wide as dimes from the medications, but open. Her head turned that permanent left tilt more pronounced now until she found David. Her tail moved, weak, just a few inches, but deliberate. Hey, girl, David whispered. She tried to lift her head, couldn't. But her eyes stayed on his face. Rebecca checked vitals. Heart rate steady, blood pressure climbing. She's stabilizing. Jason moved closer to the table. Is she going to be okay? I don't know. Rebecca said, the hypothermia, the blood loss. 2 surgeries in 6 months. Ajax made a sound, soft, almost like a sigh, but Ranger heard it. He stood straight, ears forward, and responded with that same soft whine. Mother and son, both still here against all odds. Judge Summers cleared her throat. Mr. Miller, there's still the matter of custody. David looked at Elena. She'd been quiet through all this, standing back, watching her son's dog fight for life. She's yours, David said. Your son's dog. You just saved her. Twice. Paid for surgeries you couldn't afford. Slept on this clinic floor for weeks. Elena walked over, put her hand on David's shoulder. She chose you, in that tree. She chose to trust you. The law says I'm her legal owner, and I'm giving her to you." Elena pulled out papers from her purse. "I had these drawn up this morning, before the pond, before any of this, because Michael would have wanted her with someone who'd fight for her." David's throat closed up around something that felt like grief, but might have been its opposite. "There's one condition," Elena said. David waited. "I get to visit and bring Ranger sometimes. She should know her son." Of course, Judge Summers picked up the adoption papers, signed as witness. There, legal and binding. She looked at Mitchell. "Any objections?" Mitchell shook his head, already backing toward the door like a man who'd realized he was in the wrong church. "Good. Case dismissed. All charges dropped." The judge paused at the door. "Mr. Miller, that tree needed cutting. Sometimes doing right matters more than being legal." The crowd started dispersing. Richard Torres slunk out without a word, his expensive shoes clicking on the linoleum. Harold stayed, his hand on Jason's shoulder, both of them watching Ajax breathe. "Thank you," Harold said, quiet-like, "for teaching her what to do." David frowned. "I didn't teach her anything." "You did. You showed her that sometimes you break the rules to save something. She just followed your example." Williams and Ranger stayed by the surgery table. The younger dog hadn't moved from his mother's side. "How long can you stay?" David asked. "Have to report back tomorrow. Fort Harrison doesn't run itself, but—" Williams hesitated. "I'm retiring in 6 months, planning to move to Billings. That's only an hour from here. Ajax would like that, seeing Ranger. It's not just for Ajax." Williams met David's eyes. "Some of us need to be around others who understand what it was like over there, what it's like carrying it home." Rebecca came over with discharge papers. "She needs to stay tonight. Maybe tomorrow too, but if she keeps improving," a sound from outside, shouting. Then Harold's voice, "Don't you dare come in here," through the window. David saw Richard Torres by a van, 2 men with him. One holding a camera with a news station logo on the side. "Local news," Williams said. "Bet Richard called them. Wants to make a scene. Claim he's being denied his son's dog." David started for the door, but Elena stopped him. "No," she said. "Let me." She walked outside, still carrying Michael's folded flag. David couldn't hear what she said to Richard, but he saw her unfold the flag, show him something tucked inside. Richard's face went white as fresh paper. He backed away, got in the van. They drove off fast enough to leave tire marks. Elena came back inside, refolding the flag carefully. "What did you show him?" David asked. "Michael's last letter, the one where he explained why he never wanted his father at his funeral." She tucked the flag under her arm. "Some things don't need to be public." But Richard needed to know his son saw him clearly. Ajax made another sound, stronger this time. Her eyes tracked movement now, following Ranger as he shifted position, watching Rebecca prepare medications. "Brain function looks good," Rebecca said. "Motor response improving. If we can just—" Ajax's breathing changed, faster, more labored. "Wet." Rebecca grabbed her stethoscope, listened to Ajax's chest. Her face tightened. "What?" David asked. "Fluid in her lungs. Could be from the pond water. Could be heart failure from the stress." She prepared a syringe, injected it into Ajax's IV. The breathing didn't improve. "She needs a ventilator again," Rebecca said, "but I don't know if she's strong enough to wean off it this time." Ajax's eyes found David's, still trusting, still watching, still fighting, but for how much longer? The ventilator wheezed like David's father's old Ford, trying to start on a cold morning. He counted each mechanical breath 12 per minute. Same rate they'd set for Tommy in those last days. His hand rested on Ajax's side, feeling the artificial rise and fall through her fur. 3 days now. 3 days of machines breathing for her, while fluid drained from her lungs through tubes thick as pencils. Rebecca checked the drainage bag, held it up to the light. Less fluid today, that's something. But her eyes said what her mouth didn't. Every day on a ventilator meant muscles getting weaker. Infection risk climbing like a thermometer in August. David had learned this math 5 years ago in a different room. Ranger hadn't left. Williams had gotten emergency leave from Fort Harrison. Said he'd stay until whatever happened happened. The younger dog lay pressed against the cage where Ajax rested, making those soft sounds that seemed to say words dogs shouldn't know. Helena brought food. Nobody ate tamales on day 1, soup on day 2, sandwiches on day 3 that sat untouched on the counter getting stale. Margaret organized volunteers to walk the other clinic patients. Harold brought Jason every afternoon after school. The boy still moving careful from his time under the ice. She saved me, Jason said on day 4, pressing his face against the cage bars. I need to save her back. Doesn't work that way, Harold said, gentle as he knew how. Why not? Nobody had an answer good enough for a 9-year-old boy. Day 5. Rebecca tried weaning Ajax off the ventilator. Turned it down. Let her breathe on her own. 30 seconds before the gasping started. Then back on the machine. Tomorrow, Rebecca said. We'll try again tomorrow. Day 6. A full minute of independent breathing. Not enough. Ajax's eyes stayed closed through it all. Day 7. David hadn't been home since the pond. His shoulder had seized up completely, couldn't lift his right arm past his belt. Rebecca wanted to examine it. He waved her off with his left hand. After, he said, after what? He didn't answer because they both knew. After Ajax either breathed on her own or stopped breathing altogether. That afternoon, something changed. Ajax's eyes opened. Not the unfocused drift of medication, but sharp, alert. She looked at David, at Ranger, at the tube down her throat. Then she bit down on it. No. Rebecca rushed over. She's trying to pull it out. But Ajax wasn't pulling. She was clamping down, blocking the airflow, making herself breathe around the obstruction. She's weaning herself, Rebecca whispered. For 10 minutes, Ajax controlled her own breathing, the ventilator just decoration. Then 20 minutes, then an hour. Let's try, Rebecca said. She disconnected the ventilator. Ajax breathed on her own. Rough, like gravel in a tin can, but on her own. The oxygen monitor held steady. Ranger stood up, tail wagging for the first time in a week. Made a sound that might have been dog laughter. 2 weeks later. December now. Real winter settling in hard. David's cabin looked different with a dog bed by the wood stove. Ajax couldn't manage stairs yet, so he'd moved his mattress to the living room floor. Most nights, he woke to find her pressed against the mattress edge, needing to know he was still there. The head tilt was permanent nerve damage from the pressure in the tree. She walked in circles sometimes, confused by her own shadow. Loud noises sent her under the table, shaking like a paint mixer. Thunderstorms were worse. She'd wedge herself in the closet, whimpering until David sat with her on the floor, talking about nothing until it passed. But she was alive. Rebecca came by every day at first, then every other day, then twice a week. Professional visits, she called them, But she started staying for coffee, then for supper, then to help with Ajax's exercises. "I'm not ready," David told her one evening while Ajax dozed between them on the couch. Her head on Rebecca's lap, her tail across David's legs. For once, whatever this is turning into. Rebecca's hand found his first time they'd touched on purpose without a medical reason. "I'm not asking you to be ready," she said. "Just asking you not to run away." He didn't run. Christmas Eve, 1 year after the tree, David's cabin had never held this many people. Would have made Emily happy. She'd always said the place was too quiet. Like a library after closing. Elena arrived first, arms full of tamales she'd been making since dawn. Williams and Ranger next. Williams had taken early retirement 3 months back. Moved to Billings like he'd promised. Harold brought his whole family, Jason talking non-stop about Ajax, who'd become something of a hero at his school. Margaret carried enough pies to feed the county. Ted and Jim came arguing about football. Same argument they'd been having for 30 years. Rebecca arrived last, carrying something wrapped in brown paper. "What's this?" David asked. "Open it later, when it's quieter." Ajax moved between the guests, her tilted head making her look perpetually curious about something just out of sight. She'd learned to navigate despite the neurological damage. Developed her own way of seeing the world slightly sideways. Jason sat on the floor, reading to her from a book about military dogs. Ajax listened with the patience of someone who'd learned that sometimes the best thing you could do was just be there. Every now and then she'd lick his face when he got too excited about a particular part. "She's different," Elena said, standing beside David in the kitchen doorway. From Michael's videos, she was so intense then, so focused. Brain damage from the oxygen loss. No, not that. She's softer, like she finally got permission to stop being a soldier. Through the window, snow fell steady and thick. Tommy would have loved this house full of people, full of noise, full of life. Emily, too. She'd always wanted to host big dinners. But David had always found excuses to keep things small. They'd be happy, Rebecca said, appearing at his other side. Seeing this, David had finally told her everything about Tommy and Emily. Not all at once, but in pieces. The way Tommy got sick right after his 8th birthday. The way Emily drove through that blizzard trying to get home from her sister's, hit ice on Route 93. The way David had found that drawing of Lucky under the truck seat the day he found Ajax in the tree. "I couldn't save them," he'd said. "No," Rebecca had replied. "But you saved Ajax and she saved Jason. Maybe that's how it works, not replacing what's lost but adding to what's saved." Now, in his crowded cabin on Christmas Eve, David watched Ajax teaching Jason some command Williams had shown her. The boy's face lit up when Ajax responded, and Harold recorded it on his phone, not for evidence this time, but for memory. "Present time," Margaret announced. There weren't many gifts, money was tight all around. But Jason had drawn Ajax jumping into the pond, stick figures but recognizable. Elena gave David the dog tags Michael hadn't been buried with. Williams brought a photo of Ajax in Afghanistan, young and strong and whole. Rebecca's gift was last. David unwrapped the brown paper. Inside a collar, leather, good quality, with a brass nameplate that caught the firelight. "Ajax Miller, I found. She is not lost. She is home." David's throat closed up. He looked at Rebecca, but she was busy studying the Christmas tree like she'd never seen one before. "Put it on her," Elena said. David knelt beside Ajax. She sat perfectly still while he buckled the new collar, then shook her head tilted left as always, making the tags jingle like tiny bells. "One more thing," William said. He pulled out an envelope. This came through military channels. Took some doing. But Ajax's service record is officially recognized. She's retired with full honors. And this, he pulled out a check, is her back pay, $12,000. Covers the surgeries with some left over. David stared at the check. I can't. It's not charity. She earned it. 3 tours, 14 lives saved. That's her money, fair and square. Outside, headlights swept across the window. David looked out, van he didn't recognize. Richard Torres stepped out. The room went quiet as church. Harold moved toward the door, but David stopped him. Let me. He met Richard on the porch. Ajax followed, pressing against David's leg the way she did when she sensed tension. I'm not here to cause trouble, Richard said. His expensive suit looked thin against the Montana cold. Can I see her once? David could say no. Had every right to say no. This man had abandoned his son, tried to profit from his death, caused pain to everyone inside. But Ajax moved forward, sniffing Richard's hand. No aggression, no fear. Just curiosity about another human in her orbit. Richard knelt in the snow, not caring about his expensive pants. His hand shook as he touched Ajax's head. Michael sent me a video once, he said. Voice rough. Ajax graduating from training, I deleted it. Deleted all his messages. Thought I was teaching him a lesson about choosing the army over my plans for him. Ajax licked his hand, once. Simple as that. I'm sorry, Richard said. Not to David, to the dog. I'm sorry I wasn't there, for him, for you, for any of it. He stood, brushed snow from his knees, pulled out an envelope. What's this? Signed statement withdrawing all claims, and a donation to the county animal shelter. In Michael's name? He looked through the window at the warm room full of people. He built something good, family, connection, everything I never gave him. Richard walked back to his van, stopped at the door. Take care of her, he said. I will. No. Let her take care of you too. Michael wrote that once. Said Ajax was good at taking care of people who didn't know they needed it. After he left, David went back inside. Nobody asked what Richard had wanted. They just made space for David by the fire. Ajax settling at his feet with a sigh that said the day had been long enough. Rebecca brought him coffee. Sat close enough their shoulders touched. Helena started telling another story about Michael. Jason fell asleep against Ajax's side, and the dog didn't move even though her leg had to be going numb. David looked around the room. A year ago, he'd been alone with his grief and his guilt, building furniture for strangers and walls around himself. Now his small cabin overflowed with people who'd become family through crisis and choice. David. Rebecca touched his shoulder. You okay? He thought about Tommy asking why Lucky couldn't get the medicine he was getting. Thought about Emily singing to everything goldfish, houseplants, the coffee maker when it wouldn't work right. The hurt was still there, would always be there. But around it, something else had grown. Not replacing the loss, but surrounding it with life. Yeah, he said. I'm okay. Ajax lifted her head tilted left as always and looked at him. In her amber eyes, he saw the same thing he'd seen in the tree that day. Trust. But now he understood it better. She'd chosen to trust him then, and every day since, she chose it again, somehow. In saving her. She'd taught him to choose trust too, to choose connection, to choose life. Even when it hurt. Even when it was scary. Even when you'd already lost everything once. The snow kept falling outside. The fire crackled. Stories continued around him. Williams talking about Afghanistan. Margaret sharing town gossip. Jason waking up just long enough to ask if Ajax could teach his dog to swim this summer. David's phone buzzed. Text from an unknown number. Mr. Miller. This is Sergeant Ashley Chen from Fort Harrison. I heard about Ajax. I have a dog who needs help. Can we talk? He showed it to Williams, who smiled. Word gets around. Military folks talk. Ajax is famous now, the dog who got saved and keeps on saving. I can't take another dog. Not take, help, train maybe. You and Ajax together. She could teach them what she knows. David looked at Ajax, who was now somehow managing to be petted by 3 people at once while maintaining her dignity. What do you think? Girl, want to help some other dogs who got left behind. Ajax's tail wagged, not the desperate wagging of need, but the steady rhythm of purpose. Later, after everyone had gone home except Rebecca, who was staying to monitor Ajax overnight, purely professional, she insisted while making up the couch. David sat by the dying fire. Ajax lay beside him, her head heavy on his lap. The new collar caught the firelight. Not lost, home, he pulled out Tommy's drawing, the stick figure boy and dog he'd carried since that day at the tree. Showed it to Ajax. This was my son, he said. He would have loved you. Ajax looked at the drawing, then at David, then laid her head back down with a contented sigh. And for the first time in 5 years, that was enough. They were okay. They were home. They were, finally, at peace, friend. Let me tell you what this story really means. It's not about a dog in a tree or a man with a chainsaw. It's about every one of us who ever lost something we couldn't get back. See, we all have our hollow trees, places where we get stuck, unable to move forward or back. Mine was a house full of photographs I couldn't look at. Yours might be different. But here's what Ajax taught David. What David taught me: sometimes the thing that saves you is the thing that needs saving. Sometimes broken doesn't mean worthless. Sometimes home isn't where you started, it's where you finally stop running. Disclaimer. This is a work of fiction inspired by stories of military working dogs, created solely for entertainment purposes. This story does not condone, encourage, or promote any form of violence or harmful behavior. All characters and events are products of the author's imagination, and any resemblance to real people or events is purely coincidental. The story aims to honor the service of military working dogs and their handlers while exploring themes of loss, redemption, and community healing.